is that I need things to fuel me emotionally and inspirationally so that when I sit down and play, I have something to play about.
What it does, yeah, this makes it almost sad. At the edge of the blade, that one was for you.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Nashville Drummers Podcast. 8 is a special number. It is the symbol of infinity when turned on its side. So those of you who have been listening since episode 1 have been with us for literally an eternity. Thank you.
Modern Drummer Magazine's 2017 Readers Poll considered our next guest in the top 4 progressive drummers of the year. You may know him from bands including Royal Coda, Sianvar, and Gold Necklace, among many others. Today we were super stoked to finally sit down with Joseph Arrington. And it was really great talking to Joe, especially hearing him discuss his failures early on in his career and how that's really propelled him forward.
Yeah, actually, and not only failing, but failing spectacularly. He obviously got a lot from that. I think you'll get a lot from listening to that. Joe is not only an incredible drummer, he's a fantastic human being. He's he's a great friend of mine. And I trust his input on things ranging from drums to living life and being married and general life philosophy. He's just a really wise, thoughtful guy. And I have loved and appreciated every conversation I've ever had with the guy.
Like you said, he's just a very smart individual. It's cool to just let him talk. And
he's the kind of guy that I would like to have on for a second episode because it's easy to just get him rolling on something and just go. Yeah,
we've talked about, and I think we'll probably end up doing this, is kind of recording, not really interview style, but more just picking a topic and just, still having a guest with us, but just us going really deep into that one subject.
Right.
And see, and derail, whatever, just see where it goes, but not so much like, oh, where are you from, that kind of thing. But let's just talk about, I don't know, paradiddles or practicing or anything. Really, could be anything, but with the intent of being more, psychological about it.
Psychological.
So yeah, we'll have Joe back. And
psychological.
Again, a big thank you to everyone that has been listening and supporting this podcast so far. We hope you enjoy episode 8 with Joseph Arrington.
Such a blast. And I'm also grateful that I have a wife who's down for improv comedy for our anniversary.
Dude, yeah, for real. Right? That's not every wife.
It was actually fun.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a good time. And we stayed at the Virgin, it's just called Virgin Hotels, which is so original.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, it's nice.
I haven't stayed there.
We got a suite, and the only thing we wanted was to watch an anime called One Punch Man, and we wanted a screen mirror, but we needed the Google Chromecast to work. Google Chrome. I don't know. I feel like everything's Chrome now.
One Punch!
Yeah, One Punch, but it wouldn't work.
What?
So here we are on our anniversary, and it's nighttime, and we're in the room, and I have to call. I'm like, hey, the one thing my wife and I really want to do is just watch this show with our phone and your giant screen, your big TV. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll send someone up. I'm like, oh yeah, you have to send someone up. So they sent somebody, really nice guy, super stacked, all the right tattoos in all the right places, came in. He's just like, I got you guys. He was there for an hour. Just opened this thing in the wall and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to get this to work. And so we just had small talk until we could watch the show. He did fix it, but it was just funny that on our anniversary evening, like this guy was just sort of like, oh.
You had 1 hour with a totally new person.
Yeah, luckily it was pretty early, so like it wasn't horrible. We had time to talk, philosophy. Yeah, that's what we did. But what was funny about it is that we kept saying things like, because it really wasn't that big a deal, and so she and I kept saying like, hey, it's not that big a deal. It's our anniversary, maybe you don't have to fix it. Maybe he's just like, no, man, I really want you guys to have a good stay. So I'm on a mission. We're like, cool. Well, it's our anniversary. We're in a suite. It's like 9:30.
Do the math that there is to do.
It's not that big a deal if we are able to play anime right now. Just throwing that out there. And he's just like, no. It was so. He came off as this like, no. You know what? Most guys would quit, but me, I got your back. And we're like, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. But he did. He fixed it and he bailed just in time for us to do homework.
Right. And sleep in separate beds.
Yeah, I'm so glad there was a couch.
Yeah. Thank God.
Do you go to comedy shows often? Is that like a thing you do?
I don't, but I'm a big fan of. I've really enjoyed stand-up comedy my entire life because I feel like if you are in the right mindset and you go into a comedy club or you turn on stand-up comedy, there's kind of this like, oh, we just turned on a South Park episode quality where it's like free game. Like you have to kind of just suspend any problems you have or like, biases or anything because it's just, my grandfather said my grandfather was making fun of his own death when he was passed. It's like but you either make fun of everything or nothing.
Yep.
And
including yourself.
Yeah, this is coming from somebody who is literally making fun of himself in the hardest of times, who had been in World War II, who had, and so I don't know. I just think there's something kind of pure about that, like leave it at the door, come in. Pure absurdity, and then we can like go back to life as we know it or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I want to be that old guy making fun of my own impending doom. That I want to be like, where people are like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah. Well, if everyone around me is just a little uncomfortable with me joking about it, then I'm probably doing a good job.
Man, it's about time. Like it's been a long time.
Look at him. According to my watch, I should have been dead half an hour ago.
Yeah.
I picture, are you guys into Bowie at all? Like Black Star, his last album?
Yes.
I don't think he was necessarily making fun of his death, but he basically like, in those music videos, he's basically on his deathbed. It's pretty remarkable. Like that's some of the best music out there. And I was like, he was pretty sick throughout all of that.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. And he persevered. Bowie was such a G.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was awesome. In the movie The Labyrinth.
I haven't seen that.
It's also called...
Wait, who hasn't seen The Labyrinth? And you're a Bowie fan?
That movie can
You
also
have
be
homework.
called David Bowie's Balls, which are visible the entire movie.
Oh,
True.
great.
Yeah, they
Well, now we'll get canceled. Okay, I was waiting for that.
yeah, there was the moment. Yeah,
It's only been about 2 minutes.
it's going to be the podcast that I'm a part of, that's for sure. But
No, if we haven't been canceled by now, I think we're good.
Well, just the trick is to just not let yourself be canceled.
Right.
We're canceling you. No.
But
Okay, bye.
to answer the
We already
earliest
canceled
question,
ourselves.
I know. I don't go to a lot of stand-up comedy. Like I don't go to a ton of actually in person. Although now I feel more inclined to do it because the other night was so fun. But I have like my favorite comics and my favorite bits and stuff, and it's an antidote to the madness. And whenever I'm on tour, stand-up comedy is like it's sort of the last stand before insanity. It's like if we're on a late night drive or there's just so much going on, I try music, I try podcasts, I try intellectual stimulation, books on tape. There's all the things. And there's always that moment where I'm like, it's Jim Gaffigan time. Like it's just time to just pure absurdity. And it always works.
Yeah.
It's like an energy drink in comedic form.
Dude, when I was touring with Verge, it was like when we would get to that point, it was just time for Theo Vaughn, Need to hear about that 30-pound
Theo Von is
bag
the
of hamster bones.
Theo Von. What? No one delivers lines better than Theo Von.
Nope.
I don't know why. I actually, like most comics, I feel like I could kind of explain them. I could break down why they're so fun to listen to. Theo Von just has this weird it factor that it just lands.
He has like perfect comic timing. He has the most flawless timing I've ever heard.
That's kind of it. And I saw he released a video where he talked about his sobriety, and it was crazy and very emotional because the entire YouTube comments section was full of people just trying to quit drinking. Mm-hmm. And he talks about why he quit drinking. And he told his childhood story, and it's the most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking thing I've ever heard. And to think that someone could come from that complete chaos to be, whatever you want to call him right now.
Yeah.
Is kind of amazing. And so it was an amazing story. And the comments section was nothing but like people saying they wish they could quit drinking, and then comments supporting them. And it was just, it was like, made me tear up.
Dude,
wow.
That's so weird that you're saying that, because on the car ride over here, I was listening to some of the bands that you're in, and
cool.
So I was listening to Royal Coda, Even If. Is that the latest release?
Even If is the latest.
That was December of 2021?
Yeah, and that was tracked back in 2018.
Okay, wow.
Kind of a sign of the times.
Yeah.
It was part of an album called Compassion, but then a band called Dance Gavin Dance wanted to buy the song, which is fine. And so they opted to buy it. They bought a few songs from the current project, and then they just decided they didn't want that song in the end. So we repurposed it with Kurt on vocals, which is so weird, but apparently this stuff happens a lot more often than I thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get into, who you're playing with and that band specifically. But anyway, so just quick. So on that video, I was scrolling through the comments, and I'm just paraphrasing, but there was some comment that was like, wow, like this song has literally kept me alive. Like I've been depressed for the past few years. Or it started out by saying, oh, the band's never going to see this. And I scrolled down, and you had replied.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, we see you with a heart. And it was like,
Yeah.
So now for you to tell that story, it was,
yeah,
so cool.
it's like I'm still a little person for all intents and purposes. Like it's, I don't know. I will always be a little guy. There might be some persona of me, not huge, but in some spaces where like I'm a little bit more of a public figure, et cetera. But man, I mean, part of that comes from being on tour. And I mean, I don't want to derail us too much, but just the concept of
Derail, baby. I'm
worry,
derailer in chief over
accidents are my specialty.
title.
So, yeah. No, it a lot of that comes from being on tour and having people come up to me and say things like, and I'm just, no ego. This is just what people say. They say, hey, this song or this record or whatever kept me from taking my life. And I'm like,
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
what? Or it literally kept my relationship on track, or it saved me from the death of my mother. And I'm just thinking to myself, for the first few years of touring, I had absolutely no clue how to respond to that. Yep. I still kind of don't, but part of it is to own it, meaning acknowledging that whatever they're feeling is real. I may not fully understand it, because it's very easy for me to look at my own music and be like I could break it down into rudiments and chords, but for whatever reason,
Which we will.
it hit that person that hard. And then the other is just, for the first little while, it's awkward. It's like, oh, thanks. So what happened? And now it's just a genuine, like, I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate that resonating with you. And like, we have this mutual thing. So I actually do. Sometimes I go over comments and stuff on social media and just find people who, in that situation, may not expect to have somebody write them back.
That's always the best, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I manage a few social media accounts with pretty large followings, and it's the same kind of feeling. It's like trying to, under promise, over deliver kind of thing. Like you find the person that's like, oh, like I play snare drum in middle school concert band. Can you please reshare this? And it's like, yeah. Let's make his day and make him a fan for life, kind of thing.
Yeah, we're kind of realizing that we are just all humans. No matter how much of a rock star we are, no matter how famous or not famous or whoever we are, like the ultimate connectivity of the internet and social media kind of did that, because there's a podcast episode, I can't remember what it was, this is going to be really embarrassing because I just don't remember what it was, but I remember the phrase, the death of the rock star. And what that essentially meant is back when, let's pick a band like Queen. Like when Freddie Mercury was performing for Queen and they were live, like, I don't know, Wembley, 80,000 people or something. I'm probably butchering all that. But, and, there's girls up front screaming and crying, like just like depressed because they're so happy, which is strange. And just so much. But the moment that guy left the stage, he didn't exist until you saw him on the news, in the newspaper or on TV. You couldn't just instantly look at his Twitter,
Right.
He was almost God status. The moment he leaves the stage, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to like book the next ticket or find the next thing because I won't see him again otherwise. Now, people can watch you on stage in an audience of 10,000 people and just see what you ate for breakfast. They're like, oh, I know everything about this guy.
Right.
The reason I bring that up is because it's very easy to be in comment sections or to be feel small and be like, oh, the artist is never going to see this. It's like, well, one of the sort of positive things that's come from all of this in the last few decades is that we've kind of leveled the playing field just a little bit,
Yes.
And I'm willing to play into that. So, anyways,
Well, and that goes both ways too, because there are people with a penchant for throwing out negative comments. They'll never see this, but I'm just going to throw out this critique for the rest of people seeing the comment section to see. And then you find out so often you'll see a negative comment that's just assholery of the highest order, and then a band will respond with something like taking apart what they said, and then you see backpedaling a lot of the time. Sometimes they'll be like, "No, you guys, whatever." But a lot of times,
right.
Oh yeah, you can tell that person thought
Did not
they would
expect.
never see this or respond. Like, no, we did see it, and we're people. And we have feelings and opinions. And our opinion is, you suck, asshole.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's so much to unpack with social media, and we could talk for hours on it, but it should be enough of an open forum, like sort of a public forum, like a public square kind of a situation where, people should be able to say what they want. That's kind of the point. In fact, some of that negative feedback, although it might hurt, could be potentially beneficial.
Right.
If you just take out a few of the bad words, I don't know.
Yeah.
Really quick and good example is game developer blogs where like indie developers, because I'm a video game nut, and so like indie developers they'll release games pretty early and they'll just pay attention to fan feedback and like beta testing and stuff. Is that alpha testing? Beta testing?
Yeah, I think beta. Right?
Beta.
Beta.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Alpha testing would be us. We would be testing the game. Yeah. But anyway, it's like you get feedback from the players. It's like, hey, this thing's cool, but this thing sucks. Fix it. And then, 10 months in, they can release this like polished, amazing product.
Right.
That's a cool opportunity, But anyways, it's just something I thought of based on that. But
That's actually something I really like in following you on social media, seeing your reviews of games that I otherwise would never have even heard of or thought about.
yeah, I'm a big fan of indie games because a lot of them are trying to capture a retro concepts, both in gameplay and style, stylistically. I'm a huge aesthetic person. I like mood and atmosphere. And some indie games are capturing atmosphere and mood and emotion conceptually so much better than the stuff that's like out there that, multi-million-dollar AAA games. And
Better than movies, even. They have eclipsed movies, I believe.
Yeah.
they've kind of like transcended. But yeah, and I have Instagram for me is drums, games, movies, random BS here and there. And so I like to rate movies and games because it just starts conversation. And I have a lot of great conversations with people about games and movies, and some people don't agree with me. And that's fine. And we unpack why. I've made a few enemies. Few, yeah. And, it's just, I've met enough like-minded people on tour that they're like, they like seeing the posts about games and movies and stuff. And it's not that serious, but, if I can like slip that in there, yeah. So
You've told me in the past that those games and I guess the music and just the whole concept of them is something that's hugely, I guess, informative to your playing. I'd really like to have you unpack that for me, because that was always a curiosity for me.
Yeah, so as a drummer, and I'm not a multi-instrumentalist, so I'm just a drum set player.
Well, don't you play piano?
I did when I was younger. I mean, I can play a handful of things still, but like I can't play. I mean,
caught him in a lie right away, ladies and gentlemen.
I can't play. I can play the intro to Final Fantasy VII.
That sounds complicated.
Okay.
It's actually simpler than it sounds. But after the first 30 seconds, it does get complicated, so I can play that.
Okay.
Now, the reason I bring any of that up is because, like not being a multi-instrumentalist, is that I've learned in a handful of years that drummers, if they are just drummers, and that's not to say it's a bad thing, but for me, I realize I always have to kind of piggyback onto someone else's vision, right? Mm-hmm. So a singer-songwriter who plays acoustic guitar and sings could, they could write good enough material and they could play a stadium by themselves. So even Kurt, like one of my vocalists, Kurt, that I've worked with the most, actually, he has enough acoustic material and he's a good enough songwriter that he could hold his own if he had to. Now, as a drummer, I don't think I could just pull up to a 1,000-cap venue and set up a drum set and be like, "Where do you guys hear an hour of this?"
Yeah.
It's like
just this.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Drums are weird because they are both the backbone and one of the most important and essential things, but also still kind of an auxiliary, addition. So
that's a good point.
It's a weird blurry spot to be. And that's why I think a lot of drummers are so hell-bent on trying to figure out how to define themselves, because they're caught in between this, like, well, I practice all these crazy chops and drum solos and grooves, and I work out all these books, and I have like a whole terabyte of drum lesson videos that I watch. And then you like sit down with like a band and you're like, oh yeah, wait, what? Oh, there's a bass player here?
Yeah.
Or and all of a sudden, and not that that's a bad thing, but it's just, there's so much that goes into drums, be sort of behind the scenes to create the monster that ultimately will be maybe pulling out 98%. We'll be pulling about 2% of what we've practiced and what we know, in a live setting.
Yeah, I've always thought that's so interesting,
It's like 95%
we have these
headroom.
rooms and we shed, and it's like, whether it's Broadway or a different venue, it's like we're just laying down the groove. It has to feel good. It has to sound good. Of course, we're using rudiments, whatever, but
sure,
it's
all
different. Like,
it's all related. It all ties together. But the reason I bring that up, I trying to be more conscious of like having my tangents. Yeah. So the video game thing is, I grew up with video games, appreciating the artistry there, and they inspired me a lot. The music, the mood. I could go into that in depth, but what it really ends up.
Just quick. Where were you born?
I was born in Utah.
Utah, okay.
Of all places. Yeah, small town, Orem, Utah. Not a big music scene. I had a very sort of vanilla elementary school to junior high to high school. And, video games were a huge part of me and my friends' lifestyles. And I noticed that there were video games and movies. I should include movies, video games, and books. So media other than music that I was really into. All of it had this way of kind of sweeping me off my feet. The right book, the right movie, the right video game. And I put them all in the same category. There's been a big debate on what's art and what's not, and video games aren't as innovative as books, and they're not as engaging as movies and all this. Pick your innovation. It doesn't. And so I just really enjoyed feeling something. Finishing a game or being immersed in a movie or a book and getting the chills, right? Having the hair raised on my arms and just feeling, looking at the world through a different lens after having seen or witnessed what I had played or seen. And I was a drummer growing up as well. And then these two things started to come together in that I realized that, as a drummer, I don't just want to play crazy drum parts. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. And there's a time and place for it for sure. But I have to take time away from the drum set to experience things that really hit me hard, emotionally or whatever. That's what I'm writing about. And as a drummer, I may not have chords, I may not have melody the way other instruments do, or harmony. I mean, you could argue like the tom and the hi-hat are a harmony. I mean, I don't start talking like that's fine. That's fine. It's not wrong, but it's like, how much time do you want to spend on that?
Yeah.
But my point is, I realize that I need things to fuel me emotionally and inspirationally, so that when I sit down and play, I have something to play about. I don't just want to play drums for the sake of drums. That seems, and there are a lot of drummers that have that vibe, and they're absolute monsters, and they're so good at what they do, but there's just like a little bit of heart missing somewhere, you know? So maybe I sacrifice some crazy chops or crazy ideas for a little bit of heart, but yeah, if I were to say that video games have any role in my, seems so funny to say, because I think it was Roger Ebert that before he passed away, he said that video games are not and will never be art. And I was like,
Oh, that's crazy.
that's not fair.
I wonder what it's like in hell.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's just reviewing movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually respect that guy. I respected that guy a lot. I still do. He's got a lot of really good ideas, but that moment I was like, whoa, discounting an entire sort of industry of people who have been working their tails off to
Entire
make
art form.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could go on about that.
Man,
but
I really love that. I really relate to that as well. So it sounds like you kind of use the drums to express what you're feeling in other areas of your life, essentially.
yeah, well, if I chose to be a drummer, that's all I got. It's playing drums and talking to my therapist.
Yeah.
Those are the only two.
What
wife's
I'm curious,
my
what kind of video games did you grow up playing, or do you still play?
Okay, so if I had to do a video game history, you know, I got Nintendo a few years after it came out. And, you know, I got it for Christmas. Santa left it. My parents did not make a lot of money, so they had to really, really fight to make that happen. And I was playing Mario, Mega Man, the really hard stuff, probably not beating it, just
Yeah,
trying.
Mega Man is freakishly hard. Anyone who hasn't played that, like actual Mega Man, not Mega Man X, I love Mega Man X, but just Mega Man straight up is so freaking
it's
hard.
sadistic. It's sadistic.
It's just like abuse.
It's straight abuse. The first and second and third one are like, in fact, the first one didn't even have, I don't even think it had a save option. I think you were just, I could be wrong about that.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Within a few, they started implementing like, hey, here's a password, so you can at least start
Oh,
That's awful.
here.
those games are nightmares,
That's not
man.
fair.
They're so
Yeah,
bad.
they're crazy. In fact, they're so crazy that the people who are good at them have garnered endless views on YouTube and stuff, because
sure, yeah.
to be good at those, people are just like, how are you a human?
Right.
Yeah.
But those kinds of games, I remember when Sega and Super Nintendo first came out, I had a friend down the street who had both. His dad was a dentist, and I was like, you know, my dad was an actor and my mom was a school teacher. I was like, someday. It did happen eventually. Sonic the Hedgehog was a big win, but it was kind of the only reason to own the Sega Genesis. I'm going to get dragged for saying that. That was the first time, too, there were some kind of crossover games that were like released for both Genesis and Super Nintendo, and it's like, whoa. But then all of our schoolyard friends were like arguing like, well, Super Nintendo's got better graphics. Well, Sega's got more integrity. But yeah, Donkey Kong Country series, Super Mario, Legend of Zelda. I remember my dad and I playing Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on Super Nintendo when it first came out. We were like down in the basement till like 3 a.m.
Wow.
Of course, my mom was like, "What are you doing? Go to bed." We're just like, "Mom, just
You don't understand.
we didn't know there was a dark world. Now there's a dark world. There's like 7 more dungeons, Mom." And of course, my dad is caught in this position of like, "Okay, honey, we'll be right there. Just keep playing. I'll just." And yeah, and then you know,
Honestly, to be a dad in that moment, it's like, what a joy to
Pretty epic.
have that with your kid.
Yeah, that's
pretty epic.
special.
My dad was really into the first Zelda, the golden cartridge Zelda on on a 8-bit Nintendo, and we had many a late nights where we got caught. We're like, ooh, okay, time to go to bed. Like, I'm like 8 years old, staying up till 3. But PlayStation trajectory was like Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy VII. Still not a ton of games because I was strangely picky.
It sounds like you had your niche pretty early on. Like you knew what kind of clicked and gave you that.
I did like games that just set a mood. I don't even know how to explain that. To say that like Mega Man 2 on the 8-bit Nintendo set a mood is absurd, but it absolutely did for the time.
Yeah.
I remember I had chicken pox. And, of course it's like chicken pox. You stay home for like a week and you're like pretty much like living in a bubble.
Yeah.
Well, I went to Blockbuster because you could do that at the time and rent a cartridge.
Oh my God.
Rented Mega Man 2 and 3 from Blockbuster. Yeah, no one saw me for a week. I was just like, I was, sitting in my underwear covered in.
So it's like modern day, quarantine, the pandemic.
Pretty much. I was setting the
Netflix,
tone.
yeah.
But yeah, and now I'm obsessed with indie games because they are trying to capture this like indie kind of retro formula with modern gameplay mechanics. Obviously, controls have to be tight, but man, there's so many games that have captured atmosphere and mood and made me feel something. Like little pixel art games, that on the surface are like kind of superficial. It's like, oh, that looks cheap. Maybe it was a $2.99 game, but sometimes I'll I do a little bit of research beforehand. I play it when I'm on tour, when I'm on, I play it on flights or when I have 6-hour drives on the road, and they impact me. Same with the movies I watch and the books I read. I'm very passionate about them. I do a lot of research before I pick them up because I don't want to waste my time. You only live once, right? Well, it depends on who you talk to. But yeah, so that's my really long-winded answer to video games.
That's awesome. Yeah. See, for me, I was into the rock band. I wasn't into music games.
Nice.
So it's kind of the opposite. Like I was a drummer, then I got really big into Guitar Hero and Rock Band. And,
Nice. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I'm jealous because whenever I went to like family reunions, which I have, when my father remarried, I think he inherited 28 grandchildren. It was a big family. Bless all of you. You're all great people. I was much older now too. But those like big parties, they'd bust out like Rock Band. You've probably had this happen before.
Yeah,
they bust out Rock Band or
game.
Guitar Hero or whatever. And they're like, oh, you're a professional drummer. Like you should sit down and play. And you're like, sure. Never played before. Turns out being a drummer means absolutely nothing to Rock Band. It turns
I
out
disagree, but I think it's per person. But yeah, go on.
it's
I'm
probably
curious.
per person.
Yeah.
The only reason I say that is because the one and only real experience I had was they're like, you're a drummer. Let's just put it on easy and see how you do.
Yeah, right.
I was like, I felt like I was like 70 years old. I was like, wait, the kick pedal is on the yellow one and
Oh yeah.
Oh,
There's
it's
a
already
learning curve,
passed.
for sure. Yeah.
No, I was obliterated. In fact, I think I competed against some like 8-year-old nephew, and he
Oh
was
my
just
God,
like,
yeah.
I got a perfect score. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Great. How long
Yeah.
have you played this game before me? But anyways,
Well, this guy was like a
That's so funny.
champion.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like I was number 1, number 2 in my prime. Like in the world, I was ranked and everything.
Wait, in the world?
Because I
should
like
be
you. I started
interviewing you,
PS2
man.
And then Xbox. Yeah, he interviewed me, and then I interviewed him early on in this podcast. So you could listen back and.
Dang. It's
We
been
go
a
into
short
all
amount of
that.
time, but I've been trying to scramble to listen to the past episodes so I could tell what I was getting myself
Yeah,
into.
well, we've only had a few. You're number 8, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah,
I'm honored.
yeah, we're excited to have you.
It's a
excited
good
to have
number.
you here. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been number 8 anything. So thank you.
Thanks for making the long trek from your room. So yeah,
Ironic-
Joseph and Nathan share a room here at Diamond Sound.
We do.
How does that? Any horror stories? I'm curious how it is with Nathan.
That we're willing to tell
Right.
between the. Actually, sharing with Jeff and Nathan has been
Yeah.
cake.
Yeah, really easy.
Figure.
Literal cake. Can I say that?
You guys are all busy and on the road and playing gigs, so
I'm gone a lot.
Yep.
There's times when someone will be like, hey, can I use the studio? And I'm like, I'll literally be back in a month. So sure.
Yep. And Jeff's like never in there at all.
Atomy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what his.
He's been getting really busy.
Yeah, I don't even know what he's up
He
to
went
today.
a recent tour in starting in Florida, and then he was back yesterday in town.
Yeah, he's constantly on.
He does a
the
lot
move.
of church stuff, right?
He does.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good part too.
that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's unassuming. And I say that, when I first met him, when you first meet people, like, I don't know, like, you shake someone's hand, you're like, all right, is he a drummer? I think he's a drummer.
Yeah, what's this guy's deal?
He's a little guy. He's one of the coolest, nicest people I've ever talked to. I don't mind him hearing that. When I first heard him play, I was like, what? Just
Right.
left field. And in fact, that video, that night we all had beers and he was like, you played some music, I played some music. He's like, hey, you guys want to see this video of me covering Wax Simulacra by Mars Volta? And I was like,
Yes.
what? And so he puts on the video. It just obliterates me. And I was like,
nailed it.
oh, you're a really, really I had not judged him or anything, but it's like, everyone's a drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Yep.
especially with social media, we all have our covers and videos, and
so, you kind of wait to see what they're really all about. But then he showed me the video and just absurd player. I was like, you're really good. I'm glad we all share a room together. This is
Yep.
cool. So
Yeah, it gets. I like walking in when he's about to be leaving, and he'll be like, I'm like, what are you working on? Well, I'm working on this. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm working on this. Try that. Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. Like 10 minutes of talking. I'm like, all right, now I got to steal that. All right, how do I do that? What do I apply that to?
yeah, you want to steal some of his stuff, man. He's a good player.
Yeah. No, I meant you. I meant
me.
I meant coming back to his question.
Oh, me. Oh, yeah, definitely steal some of my stuff. I'm a good player.
Yeah.
our
So are you.
our most recent interview, Nico.
Yes, I know who he is. I haven't met him, but I know who he is.
I remember he made a comment about like, if you want to learn like the quickest way in Nashville or just in any city, like room with a bunch of drummers or like surround yourself with a bunch of drummers and musicians and like
Yeah.
sounds like you
Yeah,
guys
he lives with like 4 other drummers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he's
right.
really
Yeah, drummers are a rare breed. I remember when I worked at Skip's Music in Sacramento. Skip's Music, big family-owned retail. Yeah, like
shout out to Skips.
shout out to Skip's, still around, killing it. I think Skip is definitely seen his later years, whatever that means. I mean that in the kindest and most respectful way possible. But they're moving locations to
they
another
are?
spot, which has like a big clinic room with like a stage and all this stuff. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I was talking to Josh, the drum shop manager, and I think I might be doing their first clinic back from all this
Oh,
madness.
sweet.
Yeah.
Deserved.
They'll be on
100%.
how to be good at video games when you're sitting down on a drum set with Joesph and Tower.
Let me tell you a story about showing up to Skips. First of all, what a joy that was to go to Skips when I'm from Reading and there's not a drum
How
shop
far
to be
are
had.
those two cities?
3 hours?
Two and a half. 2.5, yeah.
3 hours.
Don't even listen to him. It's 3. It's 3.
Depends on how much.
He's an idiot. Look at him.
Depends on how much smoke from how many fires you're driving through. Sorry,
Yeah.
too soon, late. Anyways,
This is a roommate emotions coming out.
Yeah.
Just arguing.
anyway.
But to get down there and first of all, like even going to like a guitar center was like exotic for me because it's such a small town thing. But to go to Skips and just be in that, and there's a dope little drum room and there's all these different cymbals and everything I can go try out. But to show up there after having met you and known you for a couple of years or whatever, and go in, I knew you were working there part time. I was like, hey, is Joe working there? And I can't remember who I was talking to. The guy looked up from his work and goes, Joe Arrington? The best drummer in Sacramento, Joe Arrington? My personal teacher, Joe Arrington? No, I don't think he's here right now.
You're probably
that's
like,
awesome.
that doesn't sound like the guy.
No, that's not him.
That doesn't sound like him at all.
Nope, definitely must be another. That's a popular name. Yeah.
Sounds like you're talking about someone else.
I'm trying to remember how much I
come back
paid
later.
him to say that.
Yeah, right. the intern working.
Actually,
Yeah.
I agreed with everything he said.
Well, that's very kind. Yeah, Sacramento was good to me. I'm really glad I left. Bless all their hearts. Is that what we say here? Bless their hearts?
Yes, but it means fuck you.
Is it?
It does mean that here.
Don't bless your...
You can say whatever you want.
Unbless.
Yeah.
Take the bless away.
Bless your hearts in the non-Southern way. So if a Southern person says bless your heart, that's
Oh, right.
basically them telling you you're a dumb shit.
I have learned that, and yet I still use it all the time. It's hard not to. Well, I loved Sacramento, and it's funny how much work I still have there. Like I moved to Nashville, and all I do is go back to California all the time. And
Yeah, kind of talk us quickly maybe through your timeline from Utah to Sacramento, and then how long you've been here in Nashville.
so I've been in Nashville 3 years now, which has been amazing. And when I say Nashville, not Nashville proper, I live in Franklin. But, it's like if I'm anywhere else, if I say Franklin, they're going to be like, huh? It's like, I live in Nashville. Like, oh, Nashville. I heard Nashville's amazing. I'm like, it is. Don't come here.
Honky talk.
Yeah. Leave us alone.
So, which is funny because I'm a transplant.
Yeah.
But, I did, I'll try to make this quick. I did my first tour when I was 21 years old. It was Warped Tour, 2005. I'm 37. I was a hired gun. I was not part of the band. It blew my mind. I didn't make a dime. In fact, I probably spent money to be on that. But, 10,000 sugar-free.
Yeah, what an experience at that age.
Yeah.
That's kind of a tour,
I think that was the first experience I had that sort of showcased how possible it was to be a professional musician. I had dabbled in it. I had gigged junior high and high school. I played drums almost on accident. I was supposed to be, when I went into junior high, they were like, you have to play an instrument or you have to be in choir. And I was like, ugh. Both just sounded, I was like, my mom forced me to play piano, but I really just wanted to do all these other things. And this little troupe came through to do these assemblies, and they said, you could play the oboe or the clarinet. And all these little kids with their like bow ties and like, and then some kid with freckles sitting in a drum set. I remember almost like it was yesterday. He had a little suit and tie on, and he was sitting in a drum set. And she was like, or if you play your cards right and you practice hard enough, you could play the drum set for like the jazz ensemble. And he just did some goofy little drum solo, but my brain exploded. I had not thought about drums. It just connected instantly. I said, whoa, that's like a possibility? Like instead of flute and oboe and violin, like I could do that. Took a lot of work because I had to spend a lot of time on my drum pad, triangle in the orchestral pit, suspended cymbal. But it all taught me something. And then finally got my first drum set opportunities. I did jazz band in high school. I was in a punk rock band called Pork Chop because we were all fat. And
Love
we
that.
did mostly No Effects covers. And big ska punk scene in Provo, Utah, that's for sure. There's a big like Mormon ska punk scene where like everybody would like
I can see
mosh and
that.
punch each other, but no one would say a cuss word.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ended pretty quick, but it was cool while it lasted.
Wow.
And then that eventually took me to Salt Lake, Warped Tour. When I came back from that, I had a lot of personal issues, family issues. Drums were kind of shelved here and there. I was taking a lot of lessons, but there were a lot of moments where I had to working at restaurants, trying to support my family, just helping my parents through their divorce, blah, blah, blah. All the things that most people experience. But when I moved to Sacramento, I moved there for a band called Mozart Season, and they kind of fell apart, but they were really nice guys. And that's when A Lot Like Birds first contacted me. So funny. I had done my first YouTube moment ever where it was just them filming me doing this goofy little improv drum solo. And I was like wearing all black with like a beanie on. And Michael Franzino from A Lot Like Birds, he thought when he saw the video, he was convinced I was like a 40, 50-year-old dude, which at the time I was like 25.
Right.
But I was just chubby enough and like just, Limp Bizkit enough. He was like, whatever it is, he had no problem with that. He called me up and he was like, hey, do you want to like write and record for me? And I was like, sure. When I even showed up, he was like, oh, I thought you were a lot older. It's like, really? Why? He's like, the YouTube solo, you just look like a much older dude. It's like, oh, thank you. But anyways, what I love is that he thought I was like some middle-aged kind of washed up guy playing a drum solo, and he still called me to hire me.
That's amazing.
And he was like 19. That says a lot about his willingness. And so
from high school, you went, it was already like kind of full time. You had your mind that you were going to try to make this musician thing work.
sort of, there were a lot of personal issues at hand, both self-inflicted and family stuff that I would say were in theory setbacks, things that, if I was like gunning to be a musician for my career, there were certainly things at the time that were going on that were absolutely holding me back that I had to sort of overcome.
Sure.
And even in the middle of all of it, I even auditioned for the Berklee College of Music, and they offered me a partial scholarship.
Oh, wow.
and it was still too much money.
Yeah.
I was like, that was kind of a weird thing to just drop casually. But yeah, I auditioned for Berklee College of Music in L.A. They're like a troupe that went around the country to audition people who couldn't go to Boston. Weird. It's almost like it's expensive right out of the gate. And it's like, book your ticket, your hotel, spend thousands of hours working on this. We'll give you 10 minutes,
Yeah.
So yeah, I sat in and
Hope you make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hope you
Yeah,
make
right.
it. How much money do you have again? What do your parents do again? How are you? Yeah.
Oh, you'll do great here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is not a dig at music colleges. All joking aside, I respect them immensely, but
I'll dig.
But yeah, that's fine. I'll let you dig. I'll kind of look good. You'll kind of look bad.
Nate's
Yeah.
a digger. Yeah.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. Hey, I've known cats that have come from Juilliard, Berkeley, and MI and slayed.
Yes.
Like instantly got picked up, and that's their career. They never have to look back.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know cats who, and this is not a dig at any of them, it's just a reality. I've taught with them. I've been at music schools with them. I've toured with them. Cats that went to these colleges and came back and didn't really know, you shred, you graduated, now what? And,
Right.
And
It's
that
so
is
interesting how that is. Like, it really is up to the individual and like the context and what they do with it. Like I've seen that here in Nashville. I've met a ton of Berklee people, drummers and non-drummers from all different colleges. But I also have met people that haven't gone to school and they're killing it. It's
yeah,
like,
I never had a formal musical education as far as like a diploma I've probably studied with more than 50 or 60 drum instructors at this point. Whether they be one-offs with people I just respect or my mentor who I literally took lessons from for a decade in
Jay?
Utah, Jay Lawrence. Yeah.
He's the hoss, man.
He's the guy you'll never hear his name outside of this podcast. But if you listen to him, you'll be like, or if you look at his resume, you'll be like,
discography. Yeah.
how do you who are you? How are you not on Drummer World?
Yeah.
And that's just a testament to the fact that you don't have to be famous. You don't have to be on Drummer World. You don't have to be.
You don't need the follower.
I don't even think he had an interview in Modern Drummer at any point, which is something. This is not a flex, but that's something that I had. And to think that I had an interview in Modern Drummer and he didn't, that's almost. I almost wanted to be like, I'm actually going to give you this guy's number because you'd much rather talk to him.
Right?
Like
I'm doing you a disservice by doing this interview.
Yeah. But but he made six figures. He worked at 5 colleges adjunct. He kicked figures with big bands all the time. He was the guy where you could you could have like a big like songbook full of like a bunch of, big band tunes, and you just pick one out of the 800 and he'd instantly know how to kick it off.
Yep.
Wow.
Like he just opened the 2 pages. 1, 2, he would know how to like carry time properly, kick the figures, feel like a beast, carry the band, feel the tempo. There's so much there. And I started to get into that. My first big band gig ever was filling in for him at a rehearsal, and I bombed hard. I fell apart. I fell to pieces. They literally were like, "Can you just get off the drum set and have the other stand-in guy come over?" Because like,
Oh my gosh.
which my teacher Jay had recommended me. And I was like,
Oh. How old were you when this happened?
20,
Damn.
tail between my legs.
Yeah.
And I'd played a lot of jazz, but there is a big difference from like jazz ensemble in high school and kicking figures with a big band for an hour and a half straight with a bunch of like adult players that had been playing their whole life that knew these songs. None of them had music in front of them. You call the tune and they're like, yeah, I'm ready. You're like, oh, like I got this big book and I'm like, I got like binoculars. I'm like, oh God. And yeah, the first song I tried to play with them, I countered off. It was one of those like, just go for it.
Yeah.
Just maybe the drumming gods will smile on you.
No. There were no
I
gods.
was literally, it was within 30 seconds, I was just keeping time on the ride so they could play the song. I was toast.
Wow.
Because I'd lost my place on the chart.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
And so they literally called you off after that tune, or
Yeah, they said this. I mean, they're very. I mean, they're jazz. They're jazz cats.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It was just shy of you fucking suck.
Yeah.
But no, they were very like, hey, maybe you go practice a little more and talk to Jay. Let's get the other guy on.
Yeah.
I literally left. I was like, I wasn't going to sit around. I bailed.
Oh my gosh.
I had another moment. These are like the learning moments.
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear that story too, but I'm wondering how these have impacted you going forward. Like, 'cause I feel like we all need like those failure moments, or like we all have, whether it's like a big moment like that or something, more minute, where it's like kind of kicks you in the ass, and
Yeah, the
like,
best
oh, okay,
one.
I'm not quite ready.
The best one was my metronome baptism, which was like I was 19 and I had been playing for this
That's
band.
the title of this episode now.
Yeah, metronome baptism, baptism by fire. This guy had produced Primus and like all these big bands, and he knew some guys in a smaller band. I was supposed to record an EP. I came in, and I'd been taking lessons and studying, but I was only 19 or 20 or something. I didn't have it all in my toolbox yet, and I had not practiced to a metronome a lot. That just hadn't been a thing. I practiced my butt off. I worked through all those four-way coordinations and Rick Latham books and all that stuff, but just never used a metronome very often because, metronomes are boring and tell you what to do. But I went in to track these songs for an EP, and I remember his name, Matt Weiniger. I have no problem saying it. Matt Weiniger was tracking the album, and I was in his home studio, and I was like, man, this is my first time ever tracking an album. This is insane. And so I started the first take, he's like, let's just shake off the rust, just loosen up a little. Let's just do one fun take. Well, he stopped me halfway through the song and he said, Joe? I said, yeah, what's up? What's up? Are we good? He said, you are 2 entire quarter notes behind, but you started the song in the right place. And I was like, oh,
shit.
that's a big difference, obviously. I mean, to be 1 would be like criminal. 2, that's like, that's the drummer's plague. Like, you never want to end up there.
Yeah.
So I tried to record this song about 10 times, and he handed me my ass. He said, how often do you practice with a metronome? And I was like, sometimes. He's like, dude, you cannot play to a click. You just can't. This was in like 2001. He was like, he's like, I can tell you're creative, and that's great. But if you can't play to a metronome, you can't record. He's like, this just can't happen.
Right.
And I remember thinking, wait, we're going to still record, right? He's just like, no, I can't record you. This is over. Like, and they're still paying for the day. Like, it was really like,
Oh my gosh.
fire and brimstone. I was like,
You're just like this eager young drummer, like, oh, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, like I'm still here, right? And you're
he was notorious for being very curt and like very like forward, but I needed that because you bet. And this kind of splits people. Like, some people would run home with their tail between their legs and be like, this just literally defeated me. No more of this. This is stupid. I can't do this. The first thing I did was buy a metronome. The first thing I did was go to the drum shop it was Backbeats in Salt Lake City at the time. Now it's Salt City Drums. I had to get a Tama rhythm watch. I spent $90 on this thing. And it has like maybe 1/10 of the functions that the app does,
Right.
which charges you $4.99. But I got it. And I listened, very, very militant in my metronome practice. And so moments like that and like failing at that big band rehearsal, because I was supposed to play a gig with them. It was supposed to be a rehearsal filling in for my drum teacher so that I could gig. 30 seconds. No, 5 seconds in, I already knew. 30 seconds in, they were like, so yeah,
And then, did you go home and practice that music and like, did that kind of change your mindset?
I still took jazz seriously. I never actually went back and played with them. That was such a sobering experience. I gave that up. I was like, I still played a lot of jazz after that, but I just, like, that defeated me. I was like, I can't show my face there. Like, I can't walk into that building
They're
with
gonna
those
tell
people.
all the other big band
Oh,
guys.
yeah.
It's like,
Plus, Jay Lawrence had recommended his student, and I think he was trying to give me an opportunity to kind of like, what's interesting to me is that he thought I was good enough. And so another thing I've tried to unpack over the years is he thought I was ready for that, which is crazy. But, he'd been my teacher for years, and I'd been studying with him. He had given me all the books and play-alongs, and like he was giving me an opportunity. And so I'm wondering if, I can't tell if he was just trying to like, here's your shot. Like, I don't really know if you can nail it or not, but here's your shot. Of course, on the phone call, he's like, oh, you're fine. Was not fine.
Yeah.
Just was obliterated. But
I don't think he was trying to send you out into something that was like just from what you described. It kind of
He
sounds
had
to me
faith.
like, yeah, I think he probably thought, yeah, you're my student, and I know how good you are,
yeah.
and probably like that kind of trust in your skill to do the thing.
Yeah, and I think, in fact, it wasn't my drumming. That's the most important element of this. It has
Right.
nothing to do with my drumming. I didn't need to learn more rudiments to nail that gig.
Right.
It was actually, in fact, it wasn't even the capability. It was completely mental. I was so nervous. I had kicked figures with other bands. I'd been in jazz band in high school. That's all we did was kick figures. I mean, it was simple, but it was like, I knew how to do that.
Yeah.
And it was all just me sort of being flustered, worrying too much. And within 10 seconds of the song, having not nailed it perfectly, I guess I've never vocalized this, but yeah, I gave up. I mentally gave up in that moment.
Yeah.
I probably could have kept it together if I just relaxed a little bit and like took a few deep breaths or whatever before the song. I was so concerned about filling the shoes of my teacher and A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, but and that's something you could say about most of this if we want to get into drum philosophy and things like so much of it's here. I'm sure you guys arrive there all the time.
Yeah.
The easiest part is working on rudiments and technique. That's the easy part. That's like a no-brainer. Pick a drum lesson. All the 5 trillion drum lessons on the internet, pick one. Do it. It's probably going to benefit you. But if you don't get this right up here, you're going to be doing single stroke rolls in a dark room.
Yeah. I always love comparing music and to sports, especially tennis, because like that individual, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're in your head, if you have a bad serve, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter how good you are, how many lessons you've had or what, where you've come from. Like you're mentally, like if you're not emotionally and mentally prepared for that.
Did we talk about that whole Augusty thing?
I feel like that came up.
With Tony Robbins? Okay,
Maybe.
well, if we did, then
tennis, we've talked about that a little bit.
yeah, because Tony Robbins worked with Andre Agassi when he had gone from being the champ, the guy in tennis, to kind of falling from grace for a little while there, and at that time, Andre was working really hard on his backstroke. He's like, "Yeah, I've got a problem with my backstroke technique."
Yeah, I remember this. You did tell the story.
And Tony's like, oh, "Okay." So when you were a champ, were you working on the backstroke? No. Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Stop.
just- yeah.
He's like, it's not the backstroke. It's not your technique.
Yeah.
You're in your head. You need to get out of it. And then he got him to get out of his own head, and he started to kick ass again.
Yeah, those are great stories because every drummer in the world is going to have a slightly different spin on technique and rudiments and patterns. The beautiful thing is that none of us actually sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
What a miraculous thing that many millions of humans can have that many millions of different approaches to the same thing with a lot of the same elements.
And the same gear even. Like you take every drummer in Diamond Sound even, we'd all sound completely different.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. And when I used to teach avidly, like I worked at a place called the Music Lab, which is a music school in Sacramento. There was a time where I had 40 students a week. So it was like a lot of 10 to 15-year-olds after school extracurricular stuff. A lot of them didn't care, which is fine. They're testing it out. A lot of that's babysitting. It's like bought you a drum set for Christmas and you can play We Will Rock You by Queen, so you're probably going to be a rock star someday. It's like pageant parent mentality with drum sets, which is a weird. But anyways, I would show little basic patterns to 12-year-olds and they'd go home. And this is where I saw individuality and sort of the spirit of the self come out the most. If I meet a 35-year-old prolific professional drummer, are they going to have cool stuff to show me? Of course they are. And is it going to be different from what I do? Absolutely. That's a no-brainer. But when a 12-year-old shows up after 7 days of practicing and goes, "Hey, I got this thing to show you," and they do this thing where I'm like, how? What? I've never thought of doing that. That happens so often. And I learned. I was like, whoa. how about you go to the bathroom for 3 minutes? I'm going to shed this. Like, you, why don't you just take a break? I'm going to try and do that myself.
Right.
And it just shows that, that they were young. They weren't super talented at the time. They weren't practiced, but they just had a different perspective, right? A 12-year-old mind's like, well, what if I hit the floor tom instead of the ride bell? And it's just like the whole thing is just blown to smithereens. Just amazing stuff. So I learned that individuality sort of trumps all that other stuff, speed and that stuff has its place. I'm not dogging on it. I'm just saying for students that ask me these questions, like, what's the most important thing? And I'm like, we live in the YouTube top 10 days. Like, what are the top things that you recommend? I'm like,
send me the listicle and I'll just read it and
But one of the most important things, and my favorite player of all time, Vinny, says this in his interviews too.
Well, Vinny who?
Vinny, I know. Vincent Caliuta.
Yeah. I wrote Vinny down on one of the times I did drum off. I'm like, oh, the guy's like, Vinny Paul? Like, are you kidding me? And that's no shade at Vinny Paul, but I'm like, for real? When a drummer says Vinny, we know what Vinny we're saying.
Yeah.
If we're talking about Vinny Paul, we'd say Vinny Paul.
That reminds me of a YouTube video I saw where there's a comment section on a, I think someone was referencing Tony Williams.
Yeah.
And they said something about like, Tony, the only thing you ever need to say is the first name, Tony. And of course, some guy was like, you mean Tony Royster? And then it's just 5,000 comments deep, like, no, Tony Williams was the OG, But Tony Royster's so much better.
That's a generational thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, he's a killer drummer too. But maybe he'll be
comparing them doesn't even make sense.
Yeah,
There's no point.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to like a jazz fusion drum solo and they're like, he's no Travis Barker. Or you go to a Travis Barker drum solo and they're like, oh, he's no Brian Blade.
Right?
It's like,
he's no Brian Blade.
It's like,
I was going to say, he's no Art Blake.
I was trying to think of the most abstract, like, why would these two be in the same? And
you're right. He is not that thing.
You're absolutely
at
right.
all.
Yeah. And like,
That's a
probably
very
plus
odd
one on that
observation.
comment,
But
probably
you're correct.
completely comfortable not having each other's gigs. Like,
Yes.
really happy to
Right.
not,
Well, thank God I don't have that gig. Yeah.
Like one of my favorite drum recordings of all time is Brian Blade playing with Chick Corea in a trio live Chick Corea setting. Chick Corea? No, Chick Corea. May he rest in peace. But
Chickstopher Korea.
The power of Chick.
Middle name
Never mind.
South.
Nope, that won't even work with Christ. Anyways, but
Bless your heart.
even being a father, puns only land like 1 in 10. Maybe 1 in
Really?
10.
You know what I realized is
All the dad jokes though.
what gets you into dad jokes is making fun of dad jokes. And then soon enough you're enjoying them. So I've decided to stop because I don't want to be that guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
The best source of dad jokes is the dad joke Twitter. There's an official dad joke Twitter account,
right.
and they post like 12 times a day, and there isn't a single bad one. They're just they're all horrifically golden. It's good. I think my favorite one is the one that's pinned at the very top. That's been like the best for like the last decade, and it's everyone's favorite dad joke. A man walked into a bar. Lucky bastard. That's it. That's all the joke is.
Wow.
Anyway, but yeah, I feel like individuality, Vinny talks about that a lot. He talks about how, because all of his interviewers, he doesn't do a lot of interviews, but when Dom Famulero interviewed him, who's an amazing player as well, he got a lot out of Vinny that a lot of people couldn't. And he talked about the modern drumming scene, and Vinny's like, everyone's amazing. It's like,
Yeah.
there's so many good drummers out there right now. It's mind-blowing. Like everywhere you look, any platform, you're just getting bombarded by talent and
Any
skill.
city, small cities now, it doesn't matter where you are.
But the one thing that people still can't quite fake, or it's like there are just some people where you're like, I know who that is. You play me play me a jazz fusion album, and I could tell you that's Dave Weckl. I know those fills. I know who that is. I know those like hi-hat foot clap linear moments. I just know.
Yeah.
Right.
Same with Steve Gadd. Anything from Steve Gadd. I'm like, I know who that is. Steve Gadd, I think, is the most commonly hailed best drummer of all time. If you ask drummers, I don't trust polls much, but I think Modern Drummer did some where the most consistently revered drummer from professionals was Steve Gadd. Like he just had this, speaking as if he's passed away. Steve Gadd is still with us, by the way.
Yes.
But he has this like undeniable sort of like it factor in his pocket and the way he plays that is just, it's like that legendary the drum battle between him, Vinny, and Dave at the Buddy Rich Memorial. That was one of the first viral videos of drums I ever watched. I've probably watched it 30 times. 330. But it's so funny because Dave Weckl just does this like monstrous solo, free form, like just exercising every chop in the book. You're just like, who is this mulleted master? And then Vinny, the second mulleted master, like, you know, just doing inhuman stuff, like stuff I hadn't even thought of, like doing singles between the foot and the hand. He was just doing it. This was in the 80s, you know, or something. And like little me was like, wow, that's really innovative. It's like, yeah, this was like 25 years ago. It's like, so, but then when Steve Gadd, when they kind of finish and they kind of do the little joking, like, all right, they're all homies. They don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're like, okay, your turn. I remember Steve Gadd just kind of going, and he did this like, it was so like, you know, and he did just kind of like a really kind of jungly drum solo. And then he just busts into his famous Mozambique funk pattern. And the audience goes nuts because everyone just knows that his pocket is like, that's all you need.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't trying to copy someone else. Like he was great because he did what he did best, and it was uniquely him, you know?
Yeah, sorry. It's like 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm just listening to that the other day, actually.
That's a song where the drums don't have to stand out, right? Like they don't have to. Like your average listener would probably be like, oh, I was drum set in there somewhere. You're like, yeah. But when you really unpack what he's doing, you're like, dang, there's nobody else on earth that would have done that the same way at the time.
I've been thinking, I started thinking about that months ago. I mean, I've thought about it a lot of times, but I've thought so many times. And then again, just recently, a couple months ago, I was reprocessing this thought. No other human would have played that thing or anything even resembling what that thing was. And that made the song. That's why the song is what it is.
Especially for that. It's not like he's in a prog band, you know what I mean? Like, that could have been simple drums, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't
But,
need,
like,
you don't.
It could have been just time on a cymbal or something.
He didn't have to go that hard, but he did.
Yeah,
He did that for us.
it's funny. The second album I did for Kurt, the Everything Is Beautiful full length. One of the songs almost had that groove completely ripped. I had learned it.
Yeah.
And Kurt, because this is why I love working with Kurt. It's his idea. I don't remember which song it was, but one of the songs he said, "What if you tried that 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover groove?" And I said, "You mean just like shamelessly just copy it?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right." So
yeah,
I
play the
tracked it.
groove.
It sounded really cool, but then when I got the final mix of the album, they had decided, nah, which is fine. But that's a funny concept too, right? To just be like, what if I just sort of, shamelessly just use this?
Yeah.
Not even being like, oh yeah, I came up with this. Like, no, that's Steve Gadd's groove just in Kurt's song.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Not even trying to hide it.
people do that. We call it quoting each other, I guess. But I've been down a lot of tangents.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's interesting hearing like how far you've come and like the stories of you, especially like with the metronome story. And now it seems like you're pretty prolific in the studio. And like I was on the way over here, I was listening to some of your records with your bands, and like, man, the playing is just like top notch and
Thank you.
creative, and like. So I'm wondering like how far you've come like from those early days in the studio, and like I guess kind of talk through what your current recording process is like. And
Yeah. So if I had to just wear it on my sleeve, the album I just finished tracking is my 27th studio album, which is a cool milestone.
Yeah.
And some of them were EPs and smaller things, but not to diminish them because some of them were some of my favorites. But the reason I bring that up is because I definitely started in a place where I didn't know what I was doing in the studio. I did a lot of free stuff, a lot of like, I don't know, I just want to be on an album. I just want to make music, I don't know. And a lot of really ghetto recording situations where we're like in basements and just in people's houses, and there's, we don't even have good drum heads. There's lots of scenarios, but that being the case, I don't know. I've always been thirsty to make cool music with cool people. The paycheck was never a huge part of it. It's important. You should never sell yourself short. And it's always hard to know when to kind of push past that threshold of like, okay, I need to be paid now.
Yeah.
I like. Do you know who LJ is? Drum Photos. She's in all the Zildjian Live.
Yeah. Never met her, but I know.
She's awesome. She does a lot of photography for us, and she's a good friend of mine. And she
Super talented.
ridiculously talented.
Yeah.
And just a great human. She's a huge heart, amazing person. But she coined this phrase because one time she did some. I post a lot of her stuff and push a lot of her stuff, and she did a family photo shoot for us in Franklin. Not for free, but the way she said it was intangibles. Like even to this day, artists use intangibles, meaning I'm willing to do this. You know, you may not be paying me USD. You may not be Venmoing me, but like there might be somewhere in here that we're scratching each other's backs. And I think
like that.
I think I see a lot of artists, even in their later careers, still doing that stuff. And I tell my students it's playground stuff too. It's like baked potato stuff, right? How much money do you make playing at baked potato? Like not much, but
it's the baked potato.
But you're playing with a bunch of epic people at the
Yeah.
baked potato,
Yeah.
you know, and so that's an intangible, right? Like
Right.
I'd play the baked potato for free. I don't care. Like that's the jungle gym, right? Like they
Right.
just let school out for an hour, back to school where like I'm cutting tracks for somebody, and that's fine. But as far as the studio goes, I definitely went through all the butterflies of as soon as they press record, my vocabulary just like cuts in half, maybe even less. I went through all that. I never meant to be a heavy music guy. I will be honest. I kind of fell into that. I kind of became the dude who could play heavy music with a little extra finesse, which sort of ended up being work for me. So I kind of just did it. Not that I don't like heavy music. I have my heavy bands I like, but I never pictured myself being like a progressive drummer or playing hardcore or post-hardcore or any of that. And I just kind of fell into it, I guess. But yeah, it's been a mixture of touring, recording, and constantly being thirsty. Getting home from a tour, and a lot of the people I'm in a band with go back to work. They go back to their lives, and I'm already setting up my drum set the next day. I'm like, I'm not done yet. You know?
Yeah.
That's how Sianvar came about. Birds was touring, and I had met Sergio and a few other guys, and I was like, the moment I get home from tour, I'm already wanting to jam. I just everyone else is all at the bar and dating, and I'm on my drum set.
Yeah.
And I called it hermit life. I had to do that for years, and that was my life. And so I found a few more like-minded people from other bands that were like, yeah. And so I started more side projects and sort of like extracurricular things. And people weren't happy at first. Birds was not happy at first. They're like, dude, you're in this band with all these other guys. Like I promise you I'll only work with them when I'm not booked with Birds. And the irony is years later, half the members of Birds had like played in the side project because turns out if you're really thirsty and you really care about it and you're willing to put in the work, you can just play forever.
Right.
You can play with so many people forever.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, that kind of led to whatever catalog I have and took me to Nashville, interestingly enough.
Do you do a lot of just like sessions in Nashville, like for
None.
bands that you're not touring with, or is it just the bands that you're also touring with that you record?
Yeah. This is so not exciting. I have not done a single session in Nashville since I moved here 3 years ago. And I've only played one gig. It was a country gig with Natalie and the Damn Shandies from Port Jeff, New York. And we played out in the sticks at some like fairgrounds in front of almost nobody. So that's the only gig I've played locally.
Yep.
So I moved to Nashville, but haven't really done any work here, which is strange, but it's just.
But I think there's something to be said about that. We were kind of talking about that offline a little bit, like of how Nashville is like kind of like a hub for a lot of touring musicians. Let me talk about that a bit, like what the city has kind of brought to you, and like, obviously you've raised a family here, right?
Yeah. I have a wife and children here in Franklin, and I don't want to say we escaped California. We escaped California.
This comes up every episode.
Have you guys seen the movie Escape from L.A. with Kurt Russell?
Nope.
I'm pretty much Kurt Russell right now.
Yep. You kind of look like him. The beard?
I'm
Yeah.
gonna Google that.
Kurt Russell?
Anyway,
Oh, he's one of my favorites. You gotta watch The Thing. Greatest horror movie of all time.
yes, actually, don't even.
Oh.
That's this guy.
Oh, we'll go there.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's like the oldest picture of him. Oh yeah, it's me. There I am.
All right. I can see it.
No. It's a joke because it was a John Carpenter movie about like L.A. had turned into like a meta prison, a futuristic meta prison, and like he had to escape.
Hashtag Facebook.
Hashtag. Oh yeah.
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
Facebook, the meta prison.
Yeah.
No, moving to Nashville it happened within like a month. I was on a tour. My wife, Tara, got a job opportunity here. We've been talking about leaving because where do I begin? Taxes?
Yeah.
Well, you name it, whatever. And raising kids, school systems, things like that. We were just unsatisfied. It's the nicest possible thing I could say. We were unsatisfied.
Politically
Being
correct.
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we were unsatisfied. And so within like 2 weeks, she got the job offer. I realized that's what I really wanted. But I had to come home from this tour, and then I had a session in New York City. And then I would get back in Sacramento, and we would have 4 days to literally pack up everything we owned and drive to Nashville. We rented a home that we hadn't even been able to look at in person. We just saw it online. She just like booked it. We were like, let's just do it. Let's just freaking do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we did it. It was absolute chaos. We drove a moving truck towing a car and another SUV towing our other car for 4 days in snowy weather to Nashville. And have never looked back. Or to Franklin, I should say. And it's been great. It's been beautiful. The people here are awesome. It's balanced. I don't feel anyone tugging me any particular which way about anything in Nashville, which is important. And I don't know. My work still takes me everywhere else. You know, I fly to California, Vegas, and New York and Portland a lot for music. But living here is just kind of been my home base. It's pretty amazing to also have found that, you know, Nate lives here, which I knew, and to share a studio with him. It was cool to have somebody I knew here, which you kind of remain still kind of the only person I actually know here. I don't socialize in this area to save my life.
Yeah.
It has become the domestic, like, bedrock for me. I'm almost like a split personality. I'm in Franklin, practice my butt off and demo and stuff here at Diamond Sound, but then I have like a family life. But then as soon as I get a tour, I go into like full on tour mode, and then I'm gone for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
So it's a strange lifestyle for sure, but I love it here. I love coming back. In fact, I think the last time I went on this weird metal cruise recently. I shouldn't say weird.
Middle cruise.
It was a metal. It was called Shipwrocked. Everybody was super cool, super nice, extremely drunk. The band Scary Kids, Scaring Kids were really nice guys. They're friends of mine anyways. And it was a great experience. But I do remember sort of like when I got back to Nashville being like, oh, I'm back in Nashville. I'm back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's who you were out with?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had no idea.
Scary Kids, Scaring Kids.
Oh. Look at
That name is misrepresented a lot, turns out.
Yeah.
Turns out they're not scary at all. They're just really sweet people.
Really nice
They're
dudes.
not kids.
Chad, the guitarist, filled in with me in the band Chiodos in 2015, and we kind of watched that band stop existing. And really nice guy, and they needed somebody who could learn 16 songs in a day and a half. I'm not always that guy, but I was like, sure, see what happens. Played 2 pretty good sets, pretty good. I'd say 90%, 91%.
Nice.
Yeah, there were a few moments, but how much can one absorb in a day and a half? So, but anyway, yeah. So sorry here in Nashville, I do a lot of demoing. I practice my butt off, and I have my life with my wife and kids. But I still do a lot of session work in Port Jeff, New York, at Voodoo Studios, which is my favorite drum room in the country.
I'm from Albany, but I don't travel back for music.
There is a big difference. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
also a big difference. Yeah.
I like playing Albany though. Like the times we played Albany, isn't Albany where Equal Vision Records is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Birds was with them for a while, and we have ties with them. A lot of the artists I work with are on equal vision. Got a soft spot in my heart for Albany. It's a cool spot. But yeah, I spend a lot of time at Chris Crummett's studio in Portland, Bo Burchell in Southern California, Sacramento. I still go to Sacramento for a lot of work. So Portland, Sacramento, Southern California, and New York. That's where I do my sessions. So
Sounds like a good life.
it's a lot of travel,
Yeah, a lot of traveling.
a lot of miles,
Yeah.
lots of Nintendo Switch on the airplane, lots of hysteria out there.
What are you playing through now?
What am I playing through?
Yeah, on the Switch.
Oh, what am I playing right now?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I'm gonna go brief on that because I want to actually go to
Sure.
playing specific.
There's
things on
a
the
game
drums.
called Nuclear Throne, which is a pixel art roguelike. I give that game a 10. It's one of the most addicting experiences. The gameplay loop is one of the most brilliant, challenging, but like it's just so good. So that's a fun one. I'm playing this really gnarly pixel art Metroidvania called Blasphemous, which takes all of its inspiration and wears it on its sleeve from the Spanish Inquisition. Like really gnarly Latin, like sort of lore, and they take it to really literal and extreme lengths. It's a terrifying game, but it's really good. So yeah,
So not at all like the Monty Python skit.
no, I like the dark arts.
Okay.
Not like the Monty Python skit at all.
Some Harry Potter stuff.
That's what I'm playing.
Expect the bloody Spanish Inquisition. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Monty Python. I feel like if I had to choose any like troupe of people to just be granted immortality, it would be those guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Just live on forever. Keep
That's a
doing
good question we should start asking every guest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who would you immortalize?
Yeah. If you could pick any troupe
Not
of
drums,
people to
but-
immortalize, who would it be? Wow, that's such an odd and specific question.
Especially when you say troop, because that could mean anything.
Right.
All of humanity could be like a 9 billion person troop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or like the two of us could be a troop.
Who'd you, I don't know. Abbott and Costello. That'd be pretty good. They'd still be killing
Penn
it.
and Teller, that's kind of a troop.
Dude, Penn's falling off. Not gonna lie.
I don't know what that means.
Not gonna lie. I had a lot of respect for that guy, but I just I'm not saying
What did he do?
Cancel?
I'm
not
just
familiar either.
saying I don't I think he kind of lost his way. That's all I'm saying.
We tend to do that.
Yeah.
We all do. Penn and Teller. I just like their Fooled Us show. I just like watching when people actually fool them. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell how genuine it is. Like maybe they're just trying to like get a few in for the month. But anyway.
Yeah. For the drummers listening, which hopefully is a lot of drummers, let's definitely get into some drum topics.
Yeah, whatever you want. I'm a huge drum nerd.
Awesome.
So
Well,
I have all kinds of things cooking.
where should we start? Well, who are you playing with? Like, who's like your main act now? Is that Royal Coda or is that?
So active right now is
Yep.
Kurt Travis as a solo artist,
Okay.
Royal Coda, a band called Gold Necklace, which is Kurt and a ridiculously talented guitarist named Brandon Ewing from, I know, dog tags actually. These are my wife's army dog tags.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
This is my wedding
It's a
ring.
drum on it too, right?
Yep, it's a drum wedding ring.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah. And
Is
it does
your
look,
wife also a musician?
no,
Oh, okay.
not even close.
Not even close.
We balance each other out great. She's got a very brilliant analytical mind. I'm the goofy artist.
She's a
And
freaking G.
We absolutely need each other. We really need each other.
You really need her. Is what I'm getting.
Yes.
at.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, she's incredible. But yeah, happy 5 years. But yeah, what were we talking about?
Just bands current
yeah.
bands, and then
So Brandon Ewing, Gold Necklace. We just released a full length. I'm really proud of that album, especially the way it sounds, because it's about the most organic album I think I've ever released. And then it's hard because there's a lot of artists that I play for here and there or record for, but they have other drummers they work with as well. So there's kind of a big list. But I'd say Royal Coda, Kurt Travis, and Gold Necklace are like my current main squeezes. So yeah. Yeah, so there's some cool stuff brewing. So Royal Coda is sitting on a full length that is not out yet. We're working on marketing and all that stuff, and it's been taking a while because the world lost its mind. I don't know if anyone noticed, but
I might have.
Yeah, you lost your mind.
I know it made me lose my mind. But there's Gold Necklace is writing more music as we speak. There's a lot of stuff coming. I have a few albums I've tracked that aren't even out yet. So I'm just. It's weird to have music you're sitting on. You're just waiting for the label and everything to kind of. But something that is not completely a sure thing, but it's very close. Is I'm in talks, budget wise and marketing wise, with my team or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of people involved, but I'm putting together a solo album, which feels absurd to say as a drummer because I'm a drummer. Like Virgil Donati can have solo music, and the drums are absolutely the best part. It's very obvious. Like solo drummer, he can do anything. These other guys are really good, but they're there to support him. But I've put together enough musicians that I really trust. That Some I've worked with before. Some I just really want to work with them. And so it'll be an instrumental progressive album that's, I think we're going to track in October. I'm just working out budget stuff and marketing, and that's just going to be my playground. I just want to pick the musicians I want and make absolutely absurd music.
That's amazing.
Dude.
Yeah, like that's the dream.
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah,
so cool.
Me too.
Yeah.
I hope it works out.
Who's in the lineup? If you don't
Yeah,
mind,
give us a-
you know,
I can
anything you
say
tease, yeah.
right now there are a lot of features that are still in the works, but Reese on bass and guitar,
my lord, that guy.
he's 21, the best bass player I've ever shaken hands with. Just
He's unreal.
and that is not even a disservice to the other bass players I play with because they agree with me. Sergio, and my friend Greg Almeida from a group called Secret Gardens, who I just recently tracked for, who's a brilliant songwriter. That's kind of the core group right now, but there's a lot of features, including Brandon Ewing. I've been talking to Andrew from Idola, the guitar composer from Idola. Skylar Caparici,
Yes.
a lesser known but absolute musical monolith from Las Vegas, who will sit down with like sweatpants and a t-shirt and just show you stuff you didn't even know was possible, you
Yep.
know?
Beast.
So that's kind of what we're working with right now.
Wow, what?
It's not for sure yet, but I'm working on it.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
Yeah, hopefully it works out. I think it will.
Oh, I think it will.
I'm trying to work with Zildjian on documenting the process, and part of it is every person I've talked to, we're also making sure there's a budget for them to do full playthroughs of their parts, so that it's, you know what it really is? It's my attempt to see if I can't help just boost all these people just a little more,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I don't even care how much we make. I don't care about profit, but like I really just want this to be a platform for us to be like, hey, see how insane this guitarist is? He's also doing this, you know, like check this video out. Just more for people to be, because some of these artists just deserve to be heard and deserve to be seen. And if I can lend like a little moment, you know, that's what I want to do.
So cool.
Yeah.
Are you a Zildjian artist? Do you have other gear sponsors?
Yeah. My home is Zildjian, Gretsch, Vic Firth, 64 Audio. I don't have a drumhead endorsement, but I've never tried. I went so long getting drumhead discounts at Skip's Music just because I worked for them that like I never felt the need. Like the artist discount was almost what they were giving me anyways. So I'm like, but everyone in my life is like, how come you haven't gone to Remo? What's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know, I just haven't, you know.
Yep.
But I like Remo heads. I like all three drumhead companies. That's Evans, Aquarian, and Remo. There's probably a few,
Every drummer was like, "Oh shit!"
probably a few others out there somewhere, but
He forgot about. No, he didn't.
let's face it. No, but they all kind of have their sound. And like, while I've never been able to make Evans or Aquarian sound the way I want them to, I'll still hear other drummers play them and be like, you know, like go listen to Eric Moore play Aquarian. Tell me they're not good heads, you know, like, and so, you know,
Mike Johnson. I think he's still playing. Maybe not. Maybe he switched. But
I think he's Aquarian.
remember, he was an early Aquarian.
He was. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and so it's kind of a sound too. Like everyone kind of has their sound. But obsessed with Gretsch drums. They're an amazing company, good family of people. Have stuck with me and put up with a lot through the last decade. I'm finally getting a USA Custom this summer, like every size, getting the real deal. And I might as well plug, I'm doing a sample pack as well. So you can get a Gretsch USA Custom, like Joseph Arrington drum sample pack, like a room sample pack where all my cymbals, sounds, all the various velocities of my drums. Because I haven't really heard anything quite like it out there. And it's not a flex. It's just, you kind of either have this like, and everything has its place, right? You kind of got like the periphery fatness, or you have like, I mean, you know, there's a lot of really great samples out there, but I have had a lot of people coming to me and saying, hey, where's that kind of like fusion-y room sound? And I'm like, I don't even know where to point you. They exist, and there's some good ones, but one more couldn't hurt, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm also releasing a sample pack, a MIDI groove pack. So it's the first one of many through a company called Room Sound, where most of it's common time, but there's some 3, some 6, some 7, and some 9 as well. It's a progressive, I don't even deserve that title, but a progressive MIDI groove pack where if people get bored and they don't know how to write songs or they don't know how to be inspired, they could kick on like a Joe Arrington groove, and like
That'll inspire you.
that displacement might, you know, kickstart a few ideas. So I'm releasing that as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
badass, man.
Staying busy. That's awesome.
Trying. And I guess the last thing I'll say that people kind of already know, but I've been writing a drum book for years. A drum
Casually. Oh, by the way, writing a drum book.
Well, it's very disorganized.
Like a method book, or
It's a methodology. It's a series of systems and like sort of matrices that allow you to. It's split up. The chapters are split up into time signatures and subdivisions. So you might be playing in 4, but are you playing in 4 and you're hyper focusing on triplets, and then the relationship between like how does 6/8 also kind of sound like triplets and 4/4, things like that. So I'm trying to sort of cross-pollinate a lot of concepts, and a lot of it was me hearing drummers do things that blew my mind, but not really knowing how to practice them. I'm like, I hear this stuff happening, but I can't find any method book that
think
shows
of
that.
Matt Garska is something that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Or Matt Greiner and some of those guys.
Because you can kind of tell what they're doing, right? You're like, I can tell that's a double stroke. I can tell this and that. But there's still, the tapestry of them weaving it together is so esoteric. You're like, how do they get there? And so a lot of it was just me developing practice routines for myself, just systems and loops that help me get better. And I just want to share them with other people. So, yeah. So those are the plugs.
So cool.
How long do you think that until that's done?
10 years? Another
Really? Or,
No. No. It's
no
a big
rush.
process because it's also going to have drumless, 10-minute drumless loops
Yes.
for every
Nice.
time signature and subdivision.
Is there a working title for it?
No,
Okay.
because they've probably already been taken. I'll just call it something completely eccentric and ridiculous. I don't know yet. The idea is also to have it digital and physical, but I want the digital copy to be, I want it to be possible where if you buy the entire thing, sort of almost encyclopedic, it's like, all right, there's this price. But if you really just want the chapter on 7/8, you can buy that separately. You'd be saving money if you buy the whole thing. But if you just want the digital 7/8 chapter, if that's all you're after, that's fine. So
Interesting.
something like that.
I don't know if I've seen that really.
Quick tip,
before
people:
in, like,
buy
a
the
drum.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be worth it, and a lot of the ideas cross over for sure. A lot of it's focused on instead of feeling like you need to learn these, 4 measure chops. How about we take the stuff you already know, the double strokes, the paradiddle inversions, the singles. We take all the rudiments you're already aware of, and help you find new ways to come up with your ideas. If you sit down every day and try to learn something completely new, you're going to fry your brain. You need to be able to pull from stuff you already have in your back pocket, right? And I kind of learned that the hard way. Like I was trying to learn all these new things, and I was like, why don't I just look at the stuff I already know, but through a slightly different lens?
Yeah.
It's like the moment you show somebody how to play double stroke roll as triplets. The difference between 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. I'm going to butcher that. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet. All of a sudden, it's still a double stroke roll, but the articulation is so different now that it sounds much more abstract,
Right.
even
It's
though
really
it's a simple
mental,
idea.
and your hands are playing the exact same
It's
thing.
all here.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's what I'm hoping. But yeah, and the drumless loops are going to be done by my friend Zach, who's in a project with me called La Taiga, which is like it's like retro wave with a real drum set, kind of, I don't like lo-fi hip hop kind of stuff. But the thing about the drumless loops is that the same loops will be available at like 12 different speeds. So you might have a 10-minute sort of loop where like you could practice these halftime shuffle variations endlessly. And you also have access to those loops at 90 BPM, 100 BPM, 120, 130. So you can actually sort of ramp up the like, okay, I'm feeling confident. Like, let me bump this up 10 BPM.
Did you actually record all those at those tempos, or is it? Just...
I haven't yet, but
Okay.
I have, like, I've been doing a lot of demos of them with Zach, and he's doing all like the synthesizer stuff. And it's funny, they're unreleased. They're just sitting in limbo, but I rehearse to them. I like use them to practice because they're so good. And so they work for me.
Yeah, why not? Right?
So those are the ideas I'm trying to bring to the table. I'm not even trying to think about new things or innovate. This is just very much an extension of my personality. That's it.
Yeah,
That's all.
very cool.
So
it's awesome.
Dude, love it.
you're playing tonight?
I am.
That's sick.
10 to close, baby.
Kid Rock or Kid Rocks? Or
Tootsies.
Tootsies.
Yeah.
Dang. See, I haven't played a single Broadway gig. Nate's even offered a few to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, sounds great. And then I get then I fly somewhere else.
Yeah. Oh, and then I fly to another place and I'll do fancy schmancy
No.
Joseph Arrington
I am
things.
absolutely not saying that whatever I'm doing is fancy or better than Broadway. Trust
Then
me.
I get on my private jet, and for some reason Broadway doesn't seem as appealing after that.
That's
Then
Trust
I
me.
look up from my pina colada and I think, why would I go down there?
Trust me, just because I'm flying somewhere doesn't mean it's fancier than a Broadway
I'm just
gig.
giving you shit. I know, brother.
that's
I
funny.
know what you're saying.
What's your next upcoming tour you got going on?
I just had 2 tours cancel,
Okay.
which is so awesome. Great news. None of it was COVID related either, which is curious.
That-
I was gonna
okay.
ask. I assumed it was, but
They'll try to tell you otherwise, but it was not. But yeah, I had Tillian headlining and Royal Coda supporting got moved to November, so not canceled. There was a Blue Swan Records tour with Royal Coda headlining in June, July that's now been moved just because of the weird industry politics, and our release window matters a lot. And so we just had to move it. Luckily, not a whole lot had happened, but so I actually don't have a lot of tours booked right now. In fact, I don't have any officially booked. But I have a hell of a lot of demos and recordings to do. And a lot of prep stuff. Like I want to practice a lot. I've gotten back into more of a classic practice routine for myself, and I'm loving it. And so, yeah, I will be practicing until my deathbed. I'll still be
Yeah.
trying to think about like,
I think
does
we
this
all
thing
are,
fit
right?
into this subdivision? You know. So yeah, that's what I got going on.
Cool.
Not a lot, but not a lot.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
I felt like I'm doing so much stuff that it just never ends. Oh, what are you doing? I'm doing this and this.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. What else? Well, I don't know. I mean, it feels like that fills up all the hours of the day.
It can kind
That's
of be
it.
broken down that way.
Is that not enough for you? Like-
Yeah.
Somebody can be like, "Wow, your life is crazy." You're like,
Yeah.
I have a calendar on my phone. Like I just
Yeah.
book stuff.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Very much so. I finally have a recording rig in there, which I'm sure you've seen slowly
Yeah.
come together. But I can finally demo really good sounding drums, and maybe even potentially almost studio quality drums with a few tweaks here and there. But I can finally record from Diamond Sound, and
Dude, I need to pick your brain. That's what I'm trying to do here.
it is so much easier than I thought. And if I can do it, anyone can, because I am so old school. I am all sit down at drum and play like drummer can. Software freaks me out. Computers,
Same, yeah.
like I'm the
It
guy.
doesn't
with,
freak me out, but like we're drummers first, and it's like it's a whole other skill set: audio engineering,
I'm very
and
late to the
microphone
game.
placement, and mixing, all that kind of stuff.
If I had known how easy it was to piece together like 10 years ago,
I'm the latest to this game that can possibly be, but let me tell you how I'm about to enter it. I'm going to be going
excited.
100 miles an
I
hour
believe it.
from the moment I drop.
I believe it. I believe Nate. Yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
Scared.
Yeah, we heard it here. Yeah, we're kind of scared.
Get ready.
Preparing. I need to be in like get in the seat and put my head between my legs and get ready for impact.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what I'm doing?
Do you have
Dude,
a rig at
the
your
whole
house
nine.
as well, or is that only at Diamond?
Not at my house, although I'm very close to getting an electric rig for my house, just to be able to do MIDI packs and stuff. But yeah, my house is drum free. my neighborhood would never.
That's probably a good balance too, right? For your kids and your wife.
I do kind of like keeping it here.
Yeah.
When I'm there, I'm full dad mode. I'm taking care of things. I love to cook.
How old are the kids, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a 19-year-old,
Okay.
by the way.
Fun age.
She's amazing. She's an angel.
Yep.
I have an amazing 19-year-old daughter named Morgan. And then I have a 12-year-old son named Blake. And then I have I would call him a stepson, but he's my son and he calls me dad. He's 16. His name is Zach, and he's going to be moving in with us this summer.
Oh.
It's a long story, but we're a happy family and things are going great.
Yeah.
But I like being home and kind of keeping that separate. And then when I come here, I can kind of leave the world at the door, drum work, demo, all that stuff. And then I kind of like put back on the dad hat, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There's something about having, like, a lot of people talk about going to whatever, a coffee shop or you name it, to have that work experience. Okay, so I can have a wall between me, my business life, and my personal life. I feel like that can be really, really healthy. And it's easy for me to just kind of start incorporating drum things into every moment of my life. And I don't know if there's some space for that in a lot of things, but I tend to maybe overdo that.
I mean, we all do. I think back to when I was a kid and like I would study at the library, right? Like,
Yeah.
Why go to the library? It's like, well, there's books there. Yeah, but it's also an environment that is meant for that.
Yeah.
True.
It's really not aesthetically pleasing. It's not the most like warm atmosphere. You know, you got some cold, stark brick walls. Like it's not really. I wouldn't say it's a comfortable atmosphere, but it's meant for work. And I kind of try to treat my studio like that, where I have people say all the time, "How come you don't deck out your studio, man? How come you don't have like posters of your favorite drummers up and stuff?" I'm like, you know what? My studio's work. I can put that stuff up at home, but at work, and I've always been this way. I've always associated the studio with like, once I get here, I don't want a couch to sit down and play Xbox on.
Right.
I want just a drum set, my material, the things I need. That's it. That should be enough. That should be enough. And through Kenny Werner's Effortless Mastery, that book
buddy.
taught me, what a beast. That book taught
Write that
me,
down.
leave the world at the door. Yeah, it's a book called Effortless Mastery. It's a novelette. It's not very long. It's like a 90-page. But there's so much wisdom in there. That's a whole other podcast on its own. But one of the things I took away from it was, you know, that's why I tell a lot of young drummers. They say, "What's your?" I was on a podcast at Voodoo Studios, and they said, "If you could say anything to a bunch of young musician students out there, what would you say?" And I'm like, I'm just going to pick from all the things there are to say. I can say a million things, and most of them probably aren't even right. It's just me being me. But I think what I chose was put your phone down.
Especially now.
Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, but I use my metronome." Get an iPad.
Yeah.
Maybe connect to Wi-Fi, get just enough to get the job done. No social media. It's to the point where it is a sort of dopamine frenzy, myself included, everybody included, especially if you're a musician, because so much of your life is like, how am I growing? You know, I need to follow my growth, as if somehow if you don't follow it, it's like, you know, like Field of Dreams. You build it, then they'll come. But like, or I'm mixing up analogies. Never mind.
It's just like in Forrest Gump, where life is like a box of chocolates and
a watched drumstick never breaks.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know. Ultimately, the idea is leave the world at the door, learn how to recapture. Like when I practice, I'll try to put my phone in my glove box. I have a family, so I'm going to check it on the hour just to make sure there's no emergencies.
Sure.
But it's work, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, when my wife is on a call, she's on a call. And if some crazy emergency happens, I mean, when I was growing up, it had to be left on a voice message machine, you know, like an answering machine. Or if someone called and you were out, you just had to wait till they got back.
Right.
Now, granted, there are a lot of really epic strides we've made in being able to eliminate that. However, why do you think all the drummers and prolific players of like the 70s and 80s and 90s were, I mean, they would just...
They lock themselves in their rooms and practice.
Yeah, they'd play and play. They had no other exterior stimulants, nothing. You know, they're just in a sweaty room in Los Angeles in 1979, just shedding whatever it is they were shedding. I think Vinny, when he was playing for Frank Zappa, was averaging 3 sessions a day.
Huh.
So he would do like a commercial jingle in the morning, then he'd go to a rehearsal for like a jazz fusion thing in the afternoon and like track it, and then he'd have a rehearsal with Frank Zappa every night a month until their tour.
Insane. Zappa's one of my favorites. I was in a Zappa tribute band.
So
in school.
prolific.
Yeah. Just quick, I know Nate's got to go in a minute.
Sorry, I rambled.
What, who are your drumming influences? What do you listen to now, or even past drummers as well?
Well, I should say the obvious ones, like the Vinnie Colaiutas, the Dave Weckels, the Dennis Chambers, the Steve Gadds, the Brian Blades, the Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, Buddy Rich. There's a whole catalog of drummers where if you look up that sort of those generations, you'll be like, oh, well, these are the 10 I have to listen to.
Right.
Currently, what I'm listening to a lot of Marcus Gilmore.
Yeah.
Will Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Stumbled across Will Kennedy's Zildjian Live, which is like the least viewed one. Dude.
I love the great productions.
Yeah.
And the transcriptions and everything.
Yeah, but just his sort of, that kind of meandering funk. It's kind of like what Mike Clark did on Herbie Hancock's album.
Yeah.
Where like it's in common time, but it's just kind of like, it's kind of just constantly moving. Will Kennedy does that. Stanley Randolph, big fan of Stanley Randolph.
Dude, king of the backbeat chop, in my opinion.
Just
I don't
freaking
think
nature.
I don't think
It's not fair.
anyone does it better than him.
Which is funny too, because you see his videos and you're like, this guy's a really good funky drummer. Well, I saw a clinic video of him at MI doing Herbie Hancock's Butterfly, which is a hard tune. He just dominates, just kicking figures, fills him. I was just like, you do that too? It's like, of course you do. Damn you. He's so good.
Yeah. I saw him in a clinic with Ethan, or not a clinic, but a performance with Ethan Farmer, bass player, bass bash at NAMM.
Yeah.
And he just destroyed, like, the deepest pocket you can possibly imagine it in the chop. Like, he would do these wicked, crazy chops, and they had a fat pocket. Yeah. Ridiculous.
Tim Buell said that his was the hardest Vic Firth jams to transcribe only because he could never tell when things were happening at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
There's so many ghost notes happening at the same time as kick notes. It's all so layered and groovy. It's like, he's like, I couldn't tell what was going on, even though it was technically sounded simpler than some of those other players.
Yeah.
So yeah, that, Chris Coleman, JoJo Mayer.
Love JoJo.
Yeah, there's too
Aaron
many good
Spears.
ones,
I mean, there's so many now. It's crazy.
they all have something, right? I can chew off something from all of them.
Yeah.
And I don't try to be any of them, but I can take a little chunk of each one and be like,
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I think Garska said something a long time ago about there's no such thing as having too many influences. It's possible, though, to have too few.
sure. Yeah. I mean, like growing up, Jay Lawrence, I mean, I know we got to go, but Jay Lawrence, he would give me listening lessons. You know, all I wanted to do was chops and like jazz stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, don't play the drums this week. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? He's like, you're going to listen to these 5 albums, you know, like we're going to go down the list and you're going to listen to these. And these are like big swing albums and like some jazz fusion stuff and some Lee Ritenour and some Pat Metheny and stuff. And he's like, but don't listen like in your car while you're just driving around. He's like, sit down and listen and try to get inside their head. And that changed me.
That's come up a lot in all of our interviews so far, just the importance of listening, you know. Not just practicing the instrument and tangibly playing, but just having that influence. Like you said, a lot of varied influences and still finding your own voice within that.
Well, you'll never sound exactly like anybody else, but you can kind of aim for the stars and hit the moon, right? You can kind of sort of play in that style. Like I could maybe impersonate Garibaldi for a song, sort of, you know?
Yeah.
Shamelessly or shamefully or terribly. I don't know. Anyways.
Or terrible.
Shamefully.
Anyway, this has been great.
Dude, yeah, it's been great getting to know you a bit. We'll have to have you back on for sure.
Thank you.
We're going to do...
I'm really far away, so just let
Do
me
you
know
have
ahead
time
of
for any
time.
last minute questions?
Yeah, we want to do like the quick ending ones, or do we...
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah.
I can try to keep
We don't
it
have to
quick.
do. We don't have to do that.
I can also try to keep
We've
them
covered a
quick.
lot of non-drumming.
Every time I answer a question, it opens up into this like big discussion.
No, it's great. That's why we're doing
That's
this
what we want,
podcast.
man.
we want to get deep into a lot of different topics. So
Yeah, the idea is to have an actual just conversation with a human that's also a drummer that lives in Nashville.
So you've covered all that?
So crazy that I fit all three of those categories.
Yeah.
That was hard to do.
Franklin,
Yeah.
but we'll call it Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, okay, drummer. Yep. Nashville.
Owns a drum
Human
set, lives in the area.
TBD.
Yeah.
Sentient, carbon-based being.
Mm-hmm.
Checking off all kinds of
Using
boxes.
sentient
gentlemen.
loosely, are we? Okay.
Well, I'm a drummer. Sentient? Is that a word? Anyway. No, thank you guys.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Found all these new angles. I thought I'd just holler at you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nashville Drummers Podcast. If you liked it, please consider leaving us a review on the Apple Podcast app.
Also, definitely check us out on Instagram. You can follow us at Nashville Drummers Podcast.
If you're interested in being on the podcast, go ahead and send a message to either Dan or myself, or you can send it directly to the Nashville Drummers page on Instagram, and we will talk to you and review your case, and we will judge you harshly. Just kidding. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for episode 9 with Alex McVeigh. No relation to Timothy.